right into the presentation, and starting by the obvious, it is already pretty clear by now that the world economy is facing a crisis of an unprecedented severity and a scale. First of all, it is an external shock that has nothing to do with the inherent workings of the economies. And that's a very important point. Second point, it is a global crisis, but with uneven effects across countries. And these 2 points taken together unquestionably call for an international coordinated response, particularly within the EU. So that's why our authorities, the Spanish authorities, together with the rest of the European Union, is working towards this end, is working to put in place a coordinated response, commensurate to the challenge we have before us. But time is of the essence. So this package has to be put in place very soon, just to make sure that the recovery we have is of a nice V shape, or as close as a nice V shape that we can have. So as I believe that these 2 points are paramount, I'd like to elaborate a little bit on them and refer to the Spanish economy. Because as I was saying, this is a shock that has nothing to do with the track record of good economic policies and reforms that Spain had put in place and that had made possible that the economy be placed as for the last few years, the fastest growing economy among the largest economies in the Eurozone. And not only that, Spain has been for the last 6 years the second fastest growing economies among the world's advanced economies after the US. And this is a very important point. For the last few years, you guys, investors, have been seeing how strongly the Spanish economy had been sustaining an economic expansion that was going along with a strong job creation and large competitive gains. And if I had to pick one point that really symbolizes the unparalleled turnaround that Spain had been experiencing for the last few years, is precisely these large competitive gains. We closed 2019 with a current account surplus for the 7th consecutive year. 6 of those years coinciding with positive GDP growth rates. And believe me that this is pretty unheard of in the Spanish economy in recent history. You can also see our increasing competitiveness by looking at the upward trend followed by the way that our experts have in our GDP, going from nearly 22% in 2009 to nearly 34% in 2019. Huge upward trend follow. And you can also see the increase in our competitiveness by looking at the real unit labor cost have been performing for the last few years. And we had also done a lot to reduce our unemployment, and we had the private sector had done tremendously well to reduce its leverage, more than 72 percentage points of our GDP, and also the public sector had reduced its fiscal deficit more than 8 percentage points. Of course, we know that we had our challenges, debt high, but we had done a lot. And there it came COVID and the need to take very severe measures to contain the virus. Spain had to take very severe measures, and that's why you are seeing that tremendous drop in our GDP growth rate projected for this year. Another very important reason that explains why you are seeing such a drop in the case of Spain is that, as I was saying, this is a global crisis. Everything has been affected. Global demand, global value chains, industrial production, commodities, investment flows, but there are sectors that have been more affected than others. And in the case of Spain, we have transportation, we have the automotive sector, we have tourism, and those are sectors that are strategic, that have a very important weight in our GDP, and that have been particularly hit. That's why, again, it is paramount, it is of the essence that we have a commensurate package of a coordinated response at the EU level. And again, we are working towards that end. Of course, putting in numbers the impact that the COVID is having, well, it's very difficult because uncertainty is still the name of the game. But you can see the forecast by the European Commission, the IMF. So for Spain, a drop, the IMF is projecting 8% a drop this year, the European Commission 9.4%. Similar really to Italy, 9.5, 9.1, France 7.2, 8.2. So really, we're all in a very profound ditch. But provided that the measures that are being taken are effective, provided that we have this coordinated international response, provided that the economy starts recovering, we are projecting a very strong GDP growth for 2021. In the case of Spain, the European Commission is projecting a positive GDP growth of 7%, for Italy 6.5%, for France 7.4%, for Germany 5.9%. We have to be encouraged by the measures that have been taken, because all governments and the Spanish government, particularly because that's what I know better, has been responding swiftly and in the right direction. How? First of all, ensuring that companies stay afloat, protecting companies, providing the liquidity they needed, again, to stay afloat, with guarantees, with moratoriums in their tax collection, in security, in social security contributions. So protecting companies, very important point. Second type of measures, minimize the impact on employment by simplifying the furlough procedures, by providing access to full social benefits for layoff workers, by extending social security allowances. So again, for us, protecting employment was very, very important. And third type of measures, again, key, protect the most vulnerable with mortgages moratorium, but also for other type of credits that families had. Electricity, reduced price, freezing butane cylinder price. So protecting the most vulnerable was also a key point for us. Of course, this is going to have a huge impact on our public finances, more than 14 or nearly 14% in terms of our GDP, but very similar to what other countries will also have to face. But it was absolutely paramount and it was indispensable. Fiscal policy had to be the first line of defense to prevent the potential long-term impact of this temporary lockdown of economic activity. Fiscal policy was very important, but also the central banks, and particularly the European Central Bank, they had to make sure that the markets continue functioning correctly and that we have access to financing in good conditions, in good terms. With all these measures, we are seeing that as lockdown easing is progressing, there are signs of economic recovery. We're seeing in some indexes like purchasing managers index or some confidence indicators, but we also see it in electricity consumption, in mobility and credit card spending, and also in social security registrations. We have last month, we had more than 200,000 members joining again, and up to now, this month, we have already more than 400 workers temporarily laid off that have come back to their workplaces. So let's hope for the best. A lot of uncertainty, but we believe that the measures taken have been swift and in the right direction. Moving forward, we have specific plans to support strategic sectors like the automotive sector, with a plan of over 3.7 billion euros for renewing the fleet towards ecological transition, to promote investment, to boost competitiveness, to promote research and development. Also, tourism, very important, with a very important package of support. And another very important piece in making sure that Spain regains its path of economic growth is the ecological transition. And I guess that this offers you guys a lot of opportunity. All of these pieces offer a lot of opportunities for you guys to invest in our country, but particularly this ecological transition that promotes the efficient use of energy and use of renewable sources of energy, and that has as a very important part in the equation the rebuilding and reusing of existing buildings, which deliver significant commercial and social returns. The initial government's commitment is to rehabilitate up to 1.2 million homes and generate 70% of the electricity from renewables by 2030. So I guess this is a nice door that it's open, and that provides opportunities again for investors in your realm of activity. Digital transportation, a lot of employment, training for employment, vocational and for digital, and also, again, very important part, the investment that we will have on research and development. All of this will accompany the reconstruction process that will have also a lot of elimination of barriers, facilitation of procedures, precisely, and that's a very important point, precisely to encourage you guys to invest productively in our country. We are waiting for you in Spain, as we have seen that you've come for the last few years, and you can see the upward trend follow, but foreign direct investment for the last few years in our country. Record numbers, 2018, a record high. Never before had Spain received such a huge amount of foreign direct investment, more than 56 billion. 2018 wasn't as good, but 2019 was pretty challenging as well. And foreign direct investment dropped by more than 15%. So we got the hit as well. But 24 billion is a pretty large amount. Actually, it's the ninth highest amount that we got since we have records. So for the last few years, Spain not only have been receiving a lot of foreign direct investment, but and this includes M&A, but also very important greenfield projects. Spain in 2018 was the third largest recipient of greenfield projects in the European Union, with more than 21 billion in capex. And this was not just a one-time stance. If we take a longer period, you can see in the last 5 years how Spain has consistently been the second largest recipient of greenfield projects in Europe, more than 93 billion, and in more than 3,100 projects. And in 2018, and I was referring that maybe the amount that we received in 2019 wasn't as large, but it was very important in terms of the type of projects we were receiving. In 2019, Spain was the world's sixth largest recipient of greenfield projects in the world, and not of any greenfield project. Spain was the fifth largest recipient of greenfield projects with a lot of innovation and high-end technology. And this is critical for our competitiveness. So Spain is still attractive, and we cannot see how this COVID-19 crisis washes away all the progress that we have attained for the last few years. You can see real estate, building and infrastructure, how important it is in terms of stock and the important amounts that we've received of foreign direct investment in this sector, and the type of operations that we've seen for the last few years, not only driven by the real estate assets that financial institutions had in their balance sheet, but also hotels, and also three very important sectors where we see nice dynamic in the Spanish sector, or that we have seen up to now, and that we are sure that we will continue seeing opportunities in the senior residences, student residence, and logistics. So we wait you in Spain. Spain is open for business, and as I said, we are an open, competitive country that have done a lot. With your help, foreign direct investment has to be one of the most important levers to get us out of this stage. Thank you so much.